Nobody in Stillwater expected fireworks at the county horse auction, but Audrey Lane wasn't there to watch history. She was there to save it. Audrey stood at the edge of the dirt ring, hands gripping the cold railing so tight her knuckles turned white. The heavy scent of hay and anticipation filled the air, buzzing with the chatter of bidders and the low, anxious snorts of horses waiting their fate. Her heart pounded in her chest, beating a rhythm she'd learned to control in her rodeo days.
You can't do this, Turner!
Back when she'd
He's
been
not
all
just
muscle
property.
and certainty, before grief hollowed her out. Across the pen, a chestnut mare, Marigold, tossed her head, fiery mane catching the late afternoon sun. That horse was more than a friend, more than a piece of her father's memory. She was the last real connection Audrey had to a man whose secrets seemed to haunt every fence post on their rundown ranch. The auctioneer's voice cut through her thoughts, fast as a train and just as relentless. Lot 17, chestnut mare, Marigold, 5 years old, registered quarter horse, sound, spirited, gentle under saddle. Who'll start the bidding? A heavy-set man in a crisp suit, Blake Turner, raised his number, not even looking at Marigold, his eyes fixed on Audrey. Turner's reputation as a ruthless developer was legendary in Payne County. He'd buy up farms, break up families, and turn a profit before the ink was dry. Now he wanted Marigold, and Audrey knew it wasn't just for her bloodline. She forced herself to breathe. This wasn't just about a horse. This was about legacy, about the truth her father had taken to his grave. 10,000! Turner barked, voice echoing off the rafters. Murmurs rolled through the crowd, too high for a horse from a struggling ranch, especially one tied to the Lane family drama. Audrey's blood boiled. She dug deep, feeling her father's stubborn spirit rise up inside her. She shot her hand into the air. 11,000! Turner didn't flinch. 15. Someone gasped. The auctioneer's gavel hovered in midair, surprised. No horse in Stillwater sold for that kind of money. Audrey's cheeks burned, but she held Turner's gaze. 16,000. Turner's lip curled into a smirk. 20. Cash. The room spun. Audrey heard whispers. She can't match that. Lane's out of her league. Turner always gets what he wants. She swallowed hard. Her savings wouldn't cover half that bid, but she couldn't back down. Not here. Not now. The auctioneer hesitated. 20,000 from Mr. Turner. Do I hear 21? Anyone? Audrey opened her mouth, but Turner interrupted, raising his voice. Let's stop pretending, Lane. This horse belongs to me now, just like everything else your family failed to hold on to. A hush fell. People leaned in, hungry for scandal. Audrey's anger flared. You're wrong. Marigold isn't just any horse. She was my father's last wish before he died. He made me promise I'd protect her, no matter what. Turner's eyes narrowed. That's touching, Audrey, but sentiment doesn't pay debts. This is business. Suddenly, a reporter from the Stillwater Gazette pushed forward, camera flashing, recording every word. The crowd closed in, phones out, whispers building to a roar. Audrey stepped into the ring, boots kicking up dust. This isn't business. This is theft, of history, of trust. You think you can buy everything, Turner, but you'll never own what makes Marigold special. My father knew things. Secrets about this town. About you. Turner cut her off, voice dripping with venom. Careful, Lane. Accusations have consequences. The auctioneer tried to restore order, but chaos took hold. Bidders argued, some siding with Audrey, others with Turner. The mare, sensing tension, reared, nearly snapping her lead. Audrey dashed to her side, murmuring softly, calming her as cameras caught every moment. Security moved in, but Audrey stood her ground, tears streaking her dusty face. "I won't let you have her. My father's memory deserves better than this circus. If you want Marigold, you'll have to go through me." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some jeered. Turner's face reddened with rage. Before anyone could react, a bidder shoved another, sending people stumbling into the ring. Marigold broke loose, galloping wild circles as panic swept through the barn. A woman screamed. The auctioneer dropped his gavel. "Auction suspended! Everyone clear the area, now!" Audrey scrambled after Marigold, calling her name, heart hammering as the mare skidded to a stop by the far gate. Audrey threw her arms around Marigold's neck, whispering promises into her mane. Turner glared, face twisted in fury. "This isn't over, Lane. You just made the worst mistake of your life." The barn emptied into chaos. Security tried to restore order, but the damage was done. The auction was suspended. Marigold was safe for now, and Audrey knew the war had only just begun. Clutching Marigold's halter, feeling the horse's rapid breath against her cheek, Audrey looked back at the crowd, at Turner, at the flash of cameras, at the shocked faces of her neighbors. For the first time in months, she felt alive. Maybe this was the beginning of the fight her father had always warned her about. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Not with Marigold by her side. The sky burned orange over Stillwater as Audrey guided Marigold down the gravel lane toward home. Every muscle in her body buzzed with leftover adrenaline from the auction, but she forced herself to keep her shoulders back, chin high. She wouldn't let Turner or anyone else see her shake. Marigold walked calmly beside her, though the mare's ears flicked, alert to every rustle in the tall grass. Audrey reached up to stroke her neck, feeling the horse's trust, warm and grounding, steadying her heart just a little. When the familiar porch lights of the Lane Ranch came into view, Audrey finally let herself exhale. She led Marigold into the barn, pausing to check the latches on every stall, every window. Her father had always said, "A good horse is a target, Aud. Never let your guard down." Tonight those words sounded less like advice and more like prophecy. The house was quiet except for the steady hum of an old ceiling fan. Her mother, Grace Lane, sat at the kitchen table nursing a mug of tea, lines of worry etched deeper than usual around her eyes. Grace looked up, relief flickering across her face. "You're back. I saw the news. Lord Audrey, the whole town's talking. Are you all right?" Audrey collapsed into the chair across from her. "We got Marigold out. But Turner, he's not done. Not by a long shot." Grace pressed her lips together, as if holding back 1,000 words. Finally, she stood and went to a locked drawer. "There's something I need to show you. I should have done it sooner." From the drawer, she retrieved a battered, leather-bound notebook, its corners soft from years of handling. "Your father left this for you," she said quietly, sliding it across the table. "He wanted you to have it when the time was right." Audrey's breath caught. She flipped open the cover, her father's bold handwriting staring back at her. Scrawled notes, dates, even little sketches of Marigold's blaze and distinctive white socks. But there were also pages of cryptic phrases, warnings, even a rough map of the ranch and a list of people. Some names crossed out, others underlined twice. What is all this?" Audrey whispered. Grace shook her head. "Your father was a good man, but he carried secrets. I think he suspected something about Turner and the old land deals. He never trusted that man. Not since—" She trailed off, voice trembling. A loud bang jolted them both. Audrey jumped to her feet, heart hammering. "Stay here," she said, grabbing the heavy flashlight by the back door. She slipped outside, keeping to the shadows as she made her way to the barn. As she approached, she smelled something sharp, burnt metal. Her gut twisted. At the entrance, she found it. A horseshoe, still hot, charred black, hanging by a piece of wire from the barn door. Nailed to the wood beneath it was a note, the letters carved with a knife. "Back off or pay." Audrey's hands shook, rage and fear mixing until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. She hurried back inside, locking every door and window. The next morning, Audrey tried to act normal, but the warning gnawed at her. She called the sheriff, but he only shook his head. "Probably just some kids, Audrey, but I'll swing by later." At the breakfast table, Grace poured coffee, eyes dark with worry. "We have to be careful. Your father used to say Turner had eyes everywhere." Before Audrey could answer, a young voice called from the porch. Tyler Morgan, her student, stood there, clutching his backpack and looking more anxious than usual. Tyler was 13, thin and quiet, with haunted blue eyes that sometimes made Audrey ache. He'd been coming to the ranch for months, part of her animal therapy group after losing his dad last winter. "Morning, Tyler," Audrey said, forcing a smile. "Come to see Marigold?" Tyler nodded, glancing nervously at the barn. "Someone's been out by the pasture. There's tire tracks. And I found this." He handed her a piece of torn paper. "She's not safe. Neither are you." Audrey swallowed hard, glancing at her mother. Grace's hands trembled as she gripped her coffee mug. "That's enough," Audrey said, setting her jaw. "Nobody is scaring us off this land. Not now, not ever." Together they checked the ranch, finding more signs. Fence wires cut clean, strange footprints by the creek, the scent of cigarette smoke lingering in the shed. Audrey kept her phone ready, snapping photos of everything. That night, a storm rolled in, wind howling through the cottonwoods. Audrey tried to sleep, but every creak set her nerves on edge. Marigold paced her stall, restless. Somewhere after midnight, a noise jolted Audrey awake. A muffled bang from the barn. She shot out of bed, grabbed her boots, and rushed outside, flashlight beam slicing through the rain. The barn door was ajar. She froze, pulse thundering. Someone was inside. She could hear footsteps, the soft whicker of a frightened horse. Audrey crept in, heart racing. She saw a shadowy figure hunched by Marigold's stall, fumbling with a bottle. Gasoline. "No!" Audrey shouted, launching herself forward. The intruder spun, dropping the bottle. In the chaos, Marigold reared, hooves flashing dangerously close to the attacker's head. Audrey lunged, shoving the person away from the mare. The figure scrambled up, slipping in the mud, and sprinted out into the storm. Audrey collapsed against Marigold, sobbing in relief as the mare pressed her nose against her cheek. When the sheriff arrived, he found Audrey, Grace, and Tyler huddled in the kitchen, faces pale with shock. The evidence was clear. Someone wanted Marigold gone. Someone wanted to silence Audrey for good. But as thunder shook the house, Audrey knew she was done running. Whatever her father's secrets were, whatever Turner wanted, she was ready to fight for the truth. And for Marigold, she'd risk everything. Rainwater pooled in the low places of the pasture, glistening in the pale dawn. Audrey leaned on the fence, exhausted but determined, watching Marigold graze as if nothing had happened the night before. She rubbed the notebook her father left her between her palms, feeling the ghost of his presence in every page, every scribbled word. After everything, Turner's threats, the break-in, the warnings, she felt the past breathing down her neck like a storm. Grace joined her, a mug of coffee in hand. "You didn't sleep," she said gently, voice cracked by worry and years of loss. Audrey shook her head. "I couldn't. Dad never wrote down anything without a reason. We have to figure out what he was trying to tell us before Turner gets another chance." Grace hesitated, then reached into the pocket of her late husband's old jacket, something she'd rarely worn since his passing. Her eyes widened when her fingers closed around a small, cold object. She pulled out a rusted brass key, sewn into the inner lining. "Audrey, look." Audrey took the key, inspecting it under the weak morning light. It was old, ornate, and heavy for its size, unlike anything she'd seen around the house. "You think it's for something here?" "I honestly don't know," Grace admitted. "But your father, he was always hiding things. Protecting us, I guess." They spread the notebook out on the kitchen table, Audrey tracing her father's shorthand notes, Tyler perched beside her with a look of fierce concentration. The pages were confusing at first. Lists of numbers, random street names, odd warnings. "Trust only the horse," "Shed by the creek," "Final witness," and, scribbled across a dog-eared corner, a simple phrase, "Key inside heart, legacy outside reach." Tyler tapped the corner. "There's a shed by the creek, right? The one nobody uses?" Audrey nodded slowly. "That old storage shed's been locked since I was a kid. Dad always kept the key on him. Until now." Together they braved the mud and drizzle, crossing the pasture with the key clenched tightly in Audrey's fist. Tyler stayed close, the ghost of last night's terror still haunting his eyes, but Marigold ambled along behind them, calm and reassuring. At the weathered shed, the lock resisted at first, but the key finally turned, creaking open a door warped by years of storms and sun. The inside was a graveyard of memories. Old saddles, barrels, boxes of forgotten tools, and in the corner, a battered trunk. Audrey's breath caught as she knelt, brushing dust from the lid. She opened it slowly. Inside, a pile of faded photographs, old documents, and ribbons from rodeos long past. There was her father as a younger man, proud and grinning, holding Marigold's mother, a striking chestnut with the same white blaze. Tyler dug deeper, finding a crumpled envelope marked, "For Audrey." Inside was a letter. "Audrey, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you're in danger. Marigold's bloodline is more than a story. It's proof of what was stolen from us. Turner knows it too. Don't trust anyone except those who love this land. The horse knows the truth. Dad." Audrey's hands shook. She shuffled through more photos, pausing at one that showed Marigold as a foal, standing beside a branded Mustang stallion she didn't recognize. There was also a folded-up pedigree document, and scrawled on the back. Her father had written, "She witnessed it all." Tyler looked up. What did she witness? Audrey wasn't sure, but a deep unease gnawed at her. She examined the pedigree. It traced Marigold's ancestry back to a line of champion rodeo horses, but there was a section blanked out. Names omitted, lines crossed over. And then, at the bottom, another name. Blake Turner, written in angry, heavy letters. Audrey swallowed. Dad always said Marigold was special, but I thought it was just, fatherly pride. But this is more. They spent hours in the shed, piecing together the fragments. There were newspaper clippings about a fire at another ranch, suspicions of insurance fraud, a witness that disappeared. Marigold's mother was listed as having been in the barn the night of the fire and survived, though nothing else did. Audrey realized with a chill that Marigold too was there, a silent witness to secrets no one wanted exposed. The sun finally broke through the clouds as Audrey and Tyler returned to the main house, the evidence tucked under Audrey's arm, her mind racing. She watched Marigold, the horse's gentle gaze steady and knowing. That afternoon, Tyler lingered around the corral, his mood lighter for the first time in weeks. Audrey saddled Marigold and called him over. "Want a ride?" Tyler's face lit up, hesitant but hopeful. He swung into the saddle and Audrey led Marigold in slow circles, guiding Tyler's hands and posture. The mare responded to every cue, her calm strength grounding the boy in ways words never could. As the afternoon stretched, Audrey saw a change in Tyler, his eyes brighter, his voice stronger. Marigold, for her part, was gentle and patient, never startled, letting Tyler forget for a moment his sadness. Audrey watched, heart swelling. Maybe her father had known all along. Healing wasn't just for horses, but for broken people too. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Tyler brushed Marigold, telling her secrets and worries he'd never voiced to another soul. Audrey watched from the barn door, a bittersweet ache in her chest. She found Grace in the kitchen, turning the key over in her hands. "I think Dad left us enough to find the truth," Audrey said softly. Grace nodded, tears glimmering in her tired eyes. "But will the truth set us free, or put us in more danger?" Audrey looked out at the fields, Marigold grazing under the first stars. "Either way, we can't stop now." And as night settled on the ranch, Audrey knew this journey, one of healing, discovery, and danger, had only just begun. The Oklahoma sun shone bright the next morning, melting away the storm's memory and painting the Lane Ranch in golden light. Audrey moved through her chores with purpose, a sense of mission guiding every step. For all the fear and chaos, something had shifted inside her, a fragile hope, like the first wildflowers after winter. In the barn, Marigold greeted her with a gentle nicker, nose brushing Audrey's palm as if to say, "We made it through." Audrey rested her forehead against the mare's neck, closing her eyes, breathing in the scent of hay and horse, a comfort more healing than any words. This was a day Audrey had planned for weeks, a group therapy session for local kids struggling with anxiety and loss, each one assigned a role with the horses. For these children, Marigold was more than just a beautiful animal. She was a safe place, a living proof that strength could also be gentle, and that even the most wounded could heal. Tyler was the first to arrive, backpack slung over one shoulder, trying to hide a smile when he saw Marigold. Not far behind him came Emma, a shy girl with a stutter who rarely looked people in the eye. Then Gabe, whose parents were going through a bitter divorce. And Harper, a foster kid with a chip on her shoulder and eyes that missed nothing. Audrey gathered them in a circle of hay bales, sunlight streaming through open barn doors. "Today," she said, "we're not here to be perfect. We're here to try. Horses don't care what you're scared of. They care how you treat them. They care how you show up." She introduced each child to Marigold, watching anxieties melt away with every soft nuzzle and gentle brush. Emma's fingers trembled as she stroked Marigold's mane. But the mare stood perfectly still, lowering her head to Emma's height, as if understanding. Gabe was nervous, but after 5 minutes leading Marigold in a lazy circle, a laugh broke from him, free and unguarded. Harper stayed back, arms crossed, But when Marigold nudged her gently with a velvet nose, even Harper managed a crooked grin. Tyler was a natural, talking softly to Marigold as he walked her around the paddock, teaching the others how to read her body language. "She'll tell you when she's scared," he explained. "She'll also tell you when you're safe." Audrey watched the group, her heart swelling with pride. Each child, in their own way, reflected the healing Marigold had brought into her own life, a kind of quiet magic that couldn't be faked. After the session, the kids sprawled in the shade, feeding Marigold carrot slices and sharing stories. For the first time, Emma spoke a full sentence without stuttering. Gabe shared a joke. Harper asked Audrey if she could help with chores next weekend. Small victories, but victories all the same. Inside the house, Grace watched from the window, smiling through tears. Later, as Audrey came in for lemonade, Grace sat her down at the kitchen table, sunlight glinting off the worn wood. "Your father would be so proud," Grace said, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Not just because you're fighting for this ranch, but because you're bringing people together, healing them. Even when you're hurting." Audrey blinked back emotion. "Sometimes I think I hear him, when I'm scared or when I don't know what to do next. I can almost hear him saying, 'Just trust the horse, Aud. She'll lead you home.'" Grace smiled. "He used to say the same to me. There were things he couldn't tell us, things he tried to protect us from. But he always believed in the good, even when things looked dark." For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, memories drifting between them. Audrey took comfort in her mother's presence. No matter what Turner or anyone else tried to do, they were stronger together. That evening, Audrey walked the fence line, checking for more signs of sabotage. Her nerves still frayed from the previous nights, but with every step, she felt resolve harden inside her. She spotted Tyler sitting in the grass, Marigold beside him, the boy leaning against the mare's shoulder like a child seeking shelter from a storm. "Hey, cowboy," she said, settling beside him. He grinned shyly. "She makes everything better. I never thought anything could after, Audrey nodded, understanding more than she could say. "Horses don't judge. They don't rush you. They just stay with you until you're ready to try again." As dusk settled, Audrey knew she had made the right choice, opening her heart and her ranch, even when it meant risking everything. She felt the bond between herself, Tyler, Marigold, and the land grow stronger, a living, breathing promise that no amount of greed or fear could ever break. Back inside, Grace and Audrey pored over the old photographs and the mysterious notebook. The pieces of her father's secret still didn't quite fit, but with each memory, each story, the edges grew clearer. "He wanted us to remember what mattered," Grace said softly. "Not money, not power, but family, trust, and doing the right thing." Audrey squeezed her mother's hand, feeling the warmth pass between them. "I'm not giving up, Mom. Not on Marigold, not on Dad's truth, not on us." Grace smiled, eyes shining. "Good, because I think the hardest part is yet to come." That night, as Audrey drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of her father's laughter, Marigold's steady heart, and a future where courage and kindness triumphed over fear. She knew tomorrow might bring new threats, new heartbreak. But tonight, she let herself believe that hope could be enough. For the first time in a long while, the Lane Ranch felt like home again. The peace of that hopeful morning didn't last long. By noon, clouds rolled in, low, gray, and heavy, casting shadows across the Lane Ranch. Audrey sensed trouble before it showed itself, a prickling unease settling at the base of her neck. She went about her chores with Marigold, but couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was watching. The first sign was a simple thing: a gap in the north fence. Audrey found it after lunch, wires cut clean through, posts wrenched apart with brute force. She stared at the damage, anger and fear twisting inside her. There were muddy boot prints, big ones, leading away from the breach. A couple of stray hoof prints trailed off too, where a few horses must have panicked and bolted before turning back. Audrey fixed the fence, but her hands shook as she twisted the wire. Tyler, who'd been helping muck stalls, noticed her pale face. "What's wrong?" Audrey forced a smile. "Just some vandals, that's all." But she didn't believe it, not for a second. Turner was making his move. That afternoon, strange things began happening around the ranch. Supplies vanished from the tack room. Bags of feed, 2 jugs of kerosene, even a box of antibiotics Audrey kept for emergencies. At first she thought she'd misplaced things, but the pattern was too deliberate. Each missing item was something vital, something that would leave the horses vulnerable if trouble struck again. Grace called the sheriff, but he could only promise to patrol more often. "You're not the only ones having trouble with Turner lately," he said over the phone, voice weary. "But he's slippery. Be careful, Audrey." By sundown, Audrey was on edge. Every creak of the old ranch house, every gust of wind rattling the barn, set her nerves alight. She double-checked every latch and lock before calling it a night. Making sure Marigold was safe in her stall. She didn't sleep, lying awake in the dark, the shadows alive with imagined dangers. At dawn, a shrill whinny jerked Audrey upright. She bolted for the barn in bare feet and pajamas, heart in her throat. Tyler was already there, clutching a flashlight, eyes wide with fear. "Something's wrong with Marigold," he cried. Audrey rushed to the mare's stall. Marigold stomped, nostrils flared, eyes wild. In the feed trough, Audrey spotted a bitter, acrid smell. Her gut twisted as she grabbed the bucket and hurled it outside. She recognized the stench. Rat poison. "Oh God," Audrey breathed, tears stinging her eyes. She could have died. Tyler's fists clenched. "They're trying to kill her." Audrey hugged him fiercely. "Not while I'm alive, they won't." They called the vet, who examined Marigold and declared her unharmed. She hadn't eaten any of the tainted feed. Audrey thanked her lucky stars, then set about scouring the barn for more traps. She found a second poisoned bucket, this time set in the corner of the hayloft, tucked behind a bale. Someone knew the layout of her barn. Audrey's fear curdled into fury. She would not let these cowards win. Not Turner, not his hired men, not anyone. After the vet left, Audrey gathered Tyler and Grace at the kitchen table. "Someone's watching us. Someone's coming into our barn at night. We need to figure out who and why they're so desperate to get Marigold." Grace's hands trembled. "Your father used to hide trail cameras in the woods. There might still be one up behind the old windbreak." That evening, just before sunset, Tyler and Audrey went searching. Tyler was quiet, face set in grim determination. They combed the tree line, finally spotting a small, camouflaged camera strapped high on an oak, battery light blinking red. Audrey climbed up and retrieved it. Back in the kitchen, Audrey plugged the camera into her laptop. The memory card was nearly full. Grainy footage appeared on the screen. Headlights in the distance, shadows creeping along the fence line, a figure slipping through the pasture at midnight. One face appeared clearly: Eddie Baines, Turner's right-hand man. Eddie wore a black hoodie and gloves, moving with a confidence that chilled Audrey to the bone. "That's him," Tyler whispered. "He was at the auction with Turner." Audrey hit pause. "We have proof now. We have to be smart about this." Night crept in, heavier than before. Audrey barely slept, one ear always tuned to the world outside. At 2 a.m., a sudden banging woke her, metal striking metal. She raced out, flashlight in hand, Tyler trailing behind her. A section of the fence near the woods was down, wire yanked loose. Audrey's heart stopped as she realized Tyler was gone. "Tyler!" she yelled, voice cracking with terror. A distant shout, then the thunder of hooves. Audrey sprinted into the trees, branches slashing at her arms. She found Marigold galloping through the moonlit grass, Tyler clinging to her back, a shadowy figure chasing them. Audrey waved her arms, screaming. Marigold veered toward her, skidding to a stop. Tyler slid off, breathless but safe. "I saw someone. He tried to grab me, but Marigold pushed me out of the way. She saved me." Audrey hugged them both, trembling with relief and rage. "No one touches my family. No one." They returned to the barn, barricading themselves inside until dawn. As light spilled over the ranch, Audrey knew this was no longer just about saving a horse. It was about protecting the people and land she loved from an enemy who would stop at nothing. With Marigold watching over them, Audrey felt her resolve harden. She was done playing defense. Now it was time to fight back. The next morning brought a brittle, uneasy calm to the Lane Ranch. The sun rose over bruised clouds, lighting up the bruises on Audrey's forearms from scrambling through the woods the night before. She moved stiffly through her chores, barely tasting her coffee, mind working overtime. For the first time, she truly understood what her father had meant when he warned her that the truth is heavier than a saddle, but you still gotta carry it. As she finished mucking out Marigold's stall, Audrey's phone vibrated, a text from the sheriff. "Be careful. Heard rumors Turner's getting desperate." The warning only added fuel to the fire already burning in her chest. Audrey met Tyler and Grace at the kitchen table. The house felt like a fortress now. Windows locked, curtains drawn, doors bolted. The camera footage of Eddie Baines prowling their property was damning, but it wasn't enough. Turner would squirm out of trouble unless they found something bigger, something undeniable. Audrey turned her attention to the last cryptic clues in her father's notebook and the key that had opened the shed. She spread out the contents on the table: the pedigree, the letter, the old photos, and a bundle of faded receipts and invoices. Tyler sat beside her, eyes wide, as Grace read over her shoulder. "Look at this," Audrey said, holding up a page torn from the notebook. It showed a rough map of the ranch with a spot marked X near the old storage shed. And the words, "Legacy hidden in plain sight." "Dad loved his riddles," Grace murmured, shaking her head with a bittersweet smile. "Let's go," Audrey said, her determination set like concrete. Outside, the wind rustled the tall grass, sending ripples through the field as they approached the shed again. Audrey and Tyler searched every corner, tapping on floorboards and walls, checking for anything out of place. Behind a stack of cracked wooden crates, Audrey noticed a loose plank. With Tyler's help, she pried it up, uncovering a hollow space beneath. Nestled inside was a small, weathered tin box. Audrey's breath caught as she lifted it out, her hands shaking. She opened the lid, revealing a USB flash drive wrapped in oilcloth and a folded note. She unfolded the note. It was in her father's handwriting. Audrey, if you're reading this, you're in real danger. This drive holds proof of what Turner did. Take it to someone you trust. Do not let it fall into the wrong hands. Remember, Marigold remembers. Love, Dad. Back in the kitchen, Audrey plugged the drive into her laptop, Tyler and Grace hovering behind her. The folder on the drive was labeled Miracle. Inside were dozens of files, scanned documents, emails, and most chillingly, video footage. They watched in silence. The first video showed a much younger Turner, flanked by Eddie Baines and other men Audrey recognized from the auction. They were in a barn. Her family's barn, years ago. Turner was shouting orders, waving a branding iron. In the background, Marigold's mother and several other horses were corralled, wild-eyed and panicked. Then came another video. Turner forging pedigree documents, switching registration tags on foals, money exchanging hands. The worst was a final, grainy clip showing Turner striking a frightened horse with a whip, laughing while Eddie pocketed a wad of cash. Audrey's stomach turned. Grace covered her mouth, horrified. This is what Dad was hiding, Audrey whispered, voice thick with emotion. Turner was laundering money through horse sales, falsifying records, and abusing animals. If the town sees this... Grace looked at her daughter with a mix of fear and pride. We have to do something, Audrey. But Turner has friends everywhere. He's got half the town in his pocket. Tyler piped up. We can't just sit on this. What if he hurts more people? Audrey nodded, torn between courage and dread. We need to be smart. If we go public too soon, Turner could destroy the evidence, or worse, come after us harder. They decided to take the proof to Sheriff Mason, the only man in Stillwater Audrey believed might still care about justice. Audrey tucked the USB into her jacket and called his office. He agreed to meet after dark, caution heavy in his voice. Don't tell anyone you're coming, Audrey. Turner's got ears everywhere. As evening fell, the atmosphere on the ranch grew tense. The threat felt closer, more real than ever. Audrey kept Marigold close, letting the horse graze in the yard under her watchful eye, refusing to let her out of sight. When darkness settled, Audrey and Tyler set out in Audrey's old pickup, headlights off until they hit the back road leading to the sheriff's house. Every car behind them felt like a tale, every flash of headlights in the rear view a threat. Sheriff Mason met them at his front porch, a grim look on his weathered face. He led them inside, bolted the door, and listened as Audrey laid out the whole story. The sabotage, the break-in, the threats, and finally, the evidence. Mason watched the videos, face hardening with every frame. I always knew Turner was dirty, but this is enough to bury him. But you have to understand. He's desperate now. He won't go down without a fight. Audrey nodded, her voice steady. We're ready for whatever comes, but I won't let him hurt anyone else. Not Marigold, not Tyler, not this town. Mason agreed to move forward quietly, building a case behind the scenes. Lay low for a while. Don't trust anyone, not even folks you think are friends. When the time's right, we'll expose Turner. Audrey thanked him and drove home in silence, the weight of everything pressing down, but also a sense of hope flickering at the edges of her exhaustion. When they got back to the ranch, Audrey found Grace waiting up, worry etched deep. Audrey hugged her tightly. We have the truth, Mom. All we have to do now is survive until it comes out. As she lay awake in the dark, Marigold's steady breath audible through the open window, Audrey knew the hardest part was yet to come, But she also knew she was no longer alone. Sleep was a stranger to the Lane house that night. Audrey lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every sense sharpened by dread. She kept replaying the sheriff's warning: Turner wouldn't go down without a fight. And if the evidence they'd uncovered ever got into the wrong hands, she and everyone she loved would be in more danger than ever. A clap of thunder rumbled outside, though the sky was clear. Audrey sat up, unease prickling her skin. That's when she heard it. A car engine far too close for comfort, followed by the crunch of tires on gravel. She slipped from bed, grabbing the baseball bat from beneath her mattress, and tiptoed to the window. Headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the barn and Marigold's pen. Audrey's breath caught as she saw two figures climbing out, moving quickly, flashlights darting like hungry insects. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sheriff Mason. "Turner's men headed your way. Get out. Now." Heart pounding, Audrey raced to Tyler's room. He was already awake, eyes wide, clutching his backpack. "I heard them, Audrey," he whispered. "What do we do?" "We run," she said, voice fierce and steady. They hurried to the kitchen where Grace met them, shotgun in hand, face pale but resolute. "This house has seen worse," she muttered, but even her bravado couldn't mask the fear in her eyes. A crash echoed from the porch. The men were at the door. "We have to go now," Audrey hissed. She grabbed the USB drive and shoved it into her jacket pocket. "Back door, stay low." Together, the three of them slipped through the kitchen and out the back, moving in a crouched run toward the barn. Marigold sensed their panic, tossing her head, hooves clattering on the planks. Audrey stroked her mane, whispering, "Easy, girl. We need you." A beam of light swept over them. "Hey, over here!" a voice barked. The thugs had found them. Adrenaline took over. Audrey threw open the stall, and Tyler scrambled onto Marigold's back. Grace climbed up behind him, and Audrey swung up front, grabbing the reins. A bullet whined past, burying itself in the barn door. Grace gasped, "Go!" Audrey kicked her heels, and Marigold burst from the barn like a shot, thunder pounding under her hooves. They tore across the pasture, weaving between hay bales, the shouts of Turner's men growing fainter behind them. Gravel spat up from Marigold's hooves as they veered onto the old back road, disappearing into the dark. They rode hard, every muscle in Audrey's body burning, heart racing with fear and purpose. Marigold seemed to sense what was at stake, pushing herself beyond exhaustion. The moon flickered behind clouds, guiding them through tangled woods and shadowed fields. For miles, they rode in silence, every sound amplified. The wind in the grass, the distant growl of engines. Grace's breath hot on Audrey's shoulder. When they finally reached the old Miller farm, a mile outside town, Audrey slid from the saddle, barely able to stand. Marigold heaved, sweat soaking her coat, but she stayed alert, ears twitching for danger. "Inside," Audrey urged, ushering Tyler and Grace toward the farmhouse, its windows dark but the door unlocked, a signal from their old friend, Hank Miller. Hank, a grizzled rancher with a slow drawl and quick eyes, welcomed them in without a word, locking the door tight behind them. Grace slumped onto the couch, shaking. Tyler clung to Marigold's halter until Audrey gently pried his fingers loose. "You did good, kid," she said, voice thick with emotion. Hank poured strong coffee and listened as Audrey told him everything. The evidence, the threats, the midnight escape. He nodded slowly. "Never trusted that snake, Turner. You're safe here tonight. My land, my rules." But even here, fear lingered. Audrey peered out the window, watching headlights crawl along the distant road, searching. She barely breathed, every muscle taut. "They'll be back," she said quietly. After a moment, Tyler's voice broke the silence. "Audrey, I'm scared." She knelt beside him, meeting his eyes. "Me too. But you know what? We're together. That's how we make it through. And Marigold's with us. She's our miracle." A sudden banging at the barn jolted them all. "Stay here!" Audrey snapped, rushing outside. She found Marigold standing between the barn and the house, nostrils flared, eyes wild, blocking a dark shape that slunk along the fence line. As Audrey approached, the figure lunged, a flash of steel in the moonlight. Audrey's instincts took over. She swung the bat, connecting with the attacker's arm. He yelped, dropping the knife, but managed to shove her back. For a split second, Audrey saw Eddie Baines's face, twisted with anger and fear. He lunged again, but Marigold charged, placing herself between Audrey and Eddie, rearing and striking with her front hooves. Eddie stumbled back, losing his nerve as the mare's power loomed over him. Marigold let out a piercing scream, a challenge and a warning. Eddie bolted, vanishing into the trees. Audrey hugged Marigold, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us. Again." Inside, Grace and Tyler rushed to her, clinging together in relief and awe. Dawn crept over the horizon, painting the world gold and new. The danger hadn't passed, but they'd survived the night together. Audrey, Grace, Tyler, and their courageous chestnut mare. As the first light touched Marigold's coat, Audrey knew what she had to do. They couldn't keep running forever. It was time to take a stand, time to let the whole town see Turner for what he truly was. "Tonight," Audrey vowed, "we go public. No more hiding." For the first time, she didn't feel powerless. She felt ready. Sunrise broke through the trees, casting shafts of gold over Hank Miller's weathered farmhouse. Audrey stood by the window, watching Marigold graze, her breath fogging the glass. Last night's terror still pulsed in her veins, but so did a new resolve. She'd made a promise, to herself, to her father's memory, and to everyone Turner had hurt. Today, the truth would come out. Hank fried eggs and bacon, filling the kitchen with the smell of normal life, but tension hummed under every word. Grace sipped her coffee, hands shaking only a little. Tyler kept silent, eyes darting to the window every few minutes, as if expecting danger to reappear. Sheriff Mason called just after 7. "I pulled strings at City Hall. You've got a slot at the town meeting tonight. There'll be press, council members, half the town. Bring everything." Audrey nodded, clutching the phone so hard her knuckles whitened. "Is it safe?" Mason's voice was tight. "No, but it's right." By noon, word had spread. A Lane family announcement at the town meeting. The rumors swirled. "Audrey's got dirt on Turner." "It's about that horse." "Isn't that the Lane mare, the miracle one?" The more the whispers grew, the more Turner's men scuttled around town, making quiet threats, trying to buy loyalty one last time. But the tides were turning. Folks who'd been scared to speak out for years now called Audrey with messages of support. Ranchers, teachers, old rodeo friends, even a few of Turner's former employees. Audrey spent the afternoon gathering everything: the USB drive, the printed files, the old photos, the camera footage. She rehearsed what she would say, pacing the porch as Marigold watched her with steady, trusting eyes. Grace braided Audrey's hair with trembling fingers, like she used to before school dances. "Whatever happens tonight, I'm proud of you," she whispered. You're braver than you know. At 6, Hank loaded Marigold into his trailer, hitching it to the old Ford. Audrey, Grace, and Tyler climbed into the cab, their silence thick with nerves. The town square was already packed. Reporters with cameras, townsfolk in work boots and Sunday dresses, police officers posted at every corner. Turner stood near the front row, arms folded, jaw clenched, his lawyer whispering furiously at his side. Audrey's hands shook as she helped Tyler unload Marigold, the mayor's presence drawing every eye. A hush fell as Audrey walked to the microphone, Marigold's halter in her grip. She looked out at her neighbors, people who'd known her since childhood, who'd watched her ride and fall, who'd seen her family both celebrated and shamed. Her voice trembled at first, but grew steadier with every word. "I never wanted to stand here," Audrey began, "but my family's been threatened. My horse has been attacked. My father's memory dragged through the mud. I can't stay silent anymore." She held up the old notebook. "My dad left me this. It's not just family history. It's a record of crimes. Forged pedigrees, stolen horses, money laundering, abuse. Everything points to one man, Blake Turner." Turner barked a laugh, but the crowd glared, silence heavy as thunder. Audrey connected her laptop to the projector. The town watched, horrified, as the videos played. Turner and Eddie Baines branding horses, swapping tags, hitting terrified animals, exchanging cash. Murmurs of shock, disgust, and anger spread. One of the council members shouted, "Is this real?" Sheriff Mason took the stage, badge shining. "It's real. We've verified the footage, the documents, and the testimonies. I have warrants for the arrest of Blake Turner and his associates." Turner tried to bolt, but deputies were already moving, handcuffs glinting. He shouted, cursing Audrey and the town, but nobody listened anymore. This time, the town listened to the truth. Audrey felt her knees wobble with relief as Turner was led away, his empire crumbling in front of the whole town. Tears streamed down Grace's face. Tyler squeezed Audrey's hand, hope bright in his eyes. Then, one by one, people from the crowd stepped forward. Old ranchers told their stories about lost horses, ruined land deals, threats made in the dark. A single mother spoke about how Turner had bullied her off her property. Even Eddie Baines, head hanging low, muttered, "It's true. All of it." The town changed that night. Walls of silence fell, replaced by a chorus of voices demanding justice and healing. When the meeting ended, Marigold stood by Audrey's side, calm amid the storm. The reporters gathered, asking questions, snapping photos. Audrey answered what she could, always circling back to the heart of it all. "This isn't just about my family. It's about every family Turner tried to hurt. We stand together now." As the square emptied, Grace hugged Audrey, sobbing against her shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "You set us free." Tyler grinned, the burden gone from his shoulders. "You're a hero, Audrey." She shook her head. "Marigold's the hero. She's the reason we made it through." Sheriff Mason approached, hat in hand. "You gave this town back its voice. That's something nobody can ever take away." On the ride home, Marigold dozed in the trailer, and for the first time in years, the Lane family rode in peace. That night, as moonlight bathed the ranch, Audrey led Marigold out to the pasture, whispering her gratitude into the horse's ear. "We did it, girl. You saved us all." And as the stars burned bright over Stillwater, a new chapter began. Not just for Audrey and Marigold, but for a town learning to heal, one truth at a time. Days passed. But the echoes of that night in Stillwater's town square lingered long after the last news van rolled out and Turner's empire crumbled. Life didn't snap back to normal. What had happened was too big for that. But a quiet hope began to settle over the Lane Ranch and ripple through the community. It was as if a great storm had passed, leaving behind not only destruction, but the chance for new growth. For Audrey, the days were busier than ever, but no longer weighed down by dread. She spent her mornings checking fence lines and walking Marigold around the dew-damp pasture, watching the mare's every step, grateful for each breath she took. Tyler arrived every morning, a new confidence lighting his face. Sometimes he helped with chores, other times he simply sat with Marigold, tracing the star-shaped whorl on her forehead, whispering his secrets to her as if the horse were a living diary. Grace moved more slowly now, but with less weight on her shoulders. She baked pies for the neighbors and sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun paint the sky. Sometimes she'd talk about Audrey's father, stories Audrey had never heard before. Sometimes she just sat quietly, the peace between mother and daughter stronger than it had ever been. One cool evening, Audrey gathered with Grace and Tyler by the paddock fence, the golden light washing over the land. They watched Marigold graze with the other horses, her chestnut coat gleaming, her head held high. "It still doesn't feel real," Tyler said softly, his voice carrying a note of awe. "Like, how did we get here? After everything?" Audrey looked at him, her gaze gentle. "I think about that too. But it's not just luck, Tyler. We fought for this, and we did it together." He nodded, picking at a blade of grass. "You think it's over? The bad stuff?" Grace reached over, squeezing Tyler's hand. "The worst is over, honey, but life will always have storms. What matters is who stands with you when they come." Audrey watched Marigold, remembering every moment when she'd almost lost hope, every night haunted by Turner's threats. Every morning she wondered if she was strong enough to keep going. She thought of the secrets her father had kept, the clues he'd left, and how Marigold had carried the truth forward, silent but steadfast. "Dad used to say that family isn't just blood," Audrey said, her voice steady. "It's loyalty. It's sacrifice. It's the people and animals who never leave you behind. That's what saved us. Not money or power, just love that refuses to give up." They sat in silence for a while, watching the horses. Tyler finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marigold saved me too, you know. After my dad died, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But when I was with her, it felt like maybe I could be okay again." Grace brushed his hair from his eyes. "She's special, that mare. Sometimes I think animals know more about healing than people ever will." Audrey nodded. "She's more than special. She's a witness, a protector, a friend. She helped us find the truth, and she helped us heal." As twilight deepened, the conversation turned to what came next. The ranch had become a symbol in Stillwater, of resilience, of second chances, of facing down injustice no matter the odds. Audrey got letters from other towns, from people asking for advice or just sharing their own stories of standing up to bullies and corruption. Some days, it all felt overwhelming. How could she live up to the legend that was already building around her and Marigold? But then she'd go out to the barn, let Marigold nuzzle her shoulder, and remember that the point was never to be a hero. The point was to do what was right, even when it was hard. One afternoon, Sheriff Mason dropped by. He leaned against the truck, hat in hand. "You know, Audrey, what you did. It's going to change this town for a long time. Folks are already talking about setting up a fund to help other ranches, maybe even a memorial scholarship for kids like Tyler. Audrey smiled, humility and gratitude mingling in her heart. It was never just about me, Sheriff. My dad, he believed in this place, in these people. I just carried the torch for a little while. He tipped his hat. You carried it well, and you didn't just save your ranch. You gave the rest of us the courage to stand up too. That night, as rain pattered gently against the windows, Audrey sat with Grace by the fireplace. The air was warm and peaceful, a stark contrast to the anxiety that had once haunted every corner of their home. "Do you think Dad would be proud?" Audrey asked, her voice trembling. Grace smiled, reaching for her hand. "He'd be proud of the woman you've become, Audrey. Proud of how you fought for what's right, how you took care of Tyler, how you loved Marigold. He always said courage was doing the right thing, even when you're scared." Audrey closed her eyes, letting those words settle deep inside her. She realized that the wounds Turner had left, the fear, the suspicion, the pain, were beginning to heal. Not because justice had been done, but because they'd found each other through the worst of it. Because they'd chosen to love and to fight, even when it seemed hopeless. As she drifted off to sleep that night, the storm outside faded to a lullaby. Marigold whickered softly in the barn, her steady presence a reminder of everything they had gained and everything they had to lose. Audrey understood now that true family was forged in loyalty and sacrifice, not blood. That trust, once broken, could be rebuilt. And that healing came not from forgetting the pain, but from walking through it. Hand in hand, heart to heart. Stillwater would never be the same, but neither would she. And that, Audrey thought, was the real miracle. Summer settled gently on Stillwater, warm and soft as a promise kept. The Lane Ranch, once haunted by threats and old ghosts, pulsed now with new life and the sense that something precious had been restored. It wasn't just that Turner was gone, or that justice had finally been served. It was the deeper change, the slow rebuilding of trust, hope, and belonging. Audrey moved through her mornings with a different kind of energy. She rose before dawn, savoring the hush of the world before anyone else was awake. Sometimes she'd find Tyler already out by the pasture, greeting Marigold with a handful of sweet feed, both of them silhouetted by the soft blue light. The ranch's old therapy program blossomed again, word spreading quickly after what had happened in town. Parents called from neighboring counties, wanting to bring their children to a place where animals and people healed together. Audrey welcomed them all, working late into the evening to make sure every child and every horse felt safe and seen. One afternoon, a little girl named Hannah, her hair in crooked braids, arrived with her mother. She barely spoke, eyes wide and uncertain, but Marigold seemed to sense her fear. The mare lowered her head, breathing softly against Hannah's hand, until the child giggled for the first time in weeks. Audrey watched the moment unfold with tears in her eyes. This, she realized, was the true legacy her father had left her. Not land, not cattle, but the courage to stand up for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and the grace to heal in the aftermath. Grace, too, was different. The sharp edges of worry had softened. She smiled more easily, humming as she moved through the kitchen, baking pies for visitors and neighbors. She and Audrey spent their evenings together, sharing stories and dreams for the future, their relationship richer than it had ever been. As for Tyler, he had found a kind of home at the ranch. He helped Audrey with chores, mentored the younger kids, and rode Marigold through fields bursting with wildflowers. The shadows in his eyes faded, replaced by something fierce and bright, a resilience born of surviving storms. The community rallied around the Lane Ranch. Donations arrived. Bales of hay, buckets of grain, even lumber for repairing old fences. The townsfolk, once divided and fearful, now gathered for potlucks and barn dances, laughter ringing beneath strings of lights. Where Turner's threats had once bred suspicion, now there was unity. Audrey often found herself invited to speak at town meetings or at the school, her story reminding everyone that real change began with a single voice refusing to be silenced. One evening, Audrey stood at the fence line, watching the sun set fire to the clouds. Marigold grazed nearby, her coat shimmering in the golden light. Grace joined her, slipping an arm around Audrey's shoulders. "I keep thinking about what comes next," Audrey murmured. "There's still so much to do. So many people who need help." Grace smiled, eyes shining. "That's the beauty of it. You get to decide what the next chapter looks like." As the stars blinked awake, Tyler and a few of the kids from therapy joined them. Someone started singing a simple song, and soon voices floated over the fields, soft, uncertain at first, then growing strong and sure. Audrey listened, feeling a wave of gratitude and humility. She thought about her father and the burden he had carried alone. She thought about Marigold, her gentleness, her courage, the secrets she had witnessed and survived. And she thought about the lesson carved into every scar, every heartbreak, every act of kindness that had brought them here. Real courage wasn't loud or violent. It was standing up for the voiceless, even when the world told you to sit down. It was speaking the truth, even when it was dangerous. It was loving without condition, even when it would be easier to walk away. As summer stretched on, Audrey made plans for the ranch's future. She applied for grants to expand the therapy program, hoping to bring in more horses, more children, even veterans struggling with trauma. She invited local schools for field trips, letting students learn firsthand about compassion, responsibility, and resilience. She set up a scholarship in her father's name, so that no child would be turned away for lack of money. The Lane Ranch became more than just a piece of land. It became a sanctuary, a place where old wounds could heal and new dreams could take root. People came to visit, to volunteer, to learn, to be reminded that hope was always possible, even after the hardest winter. On the anniversary of Turner's arrest, the whole town gathered at the ranch. There was music and food and a ceremony where Audrey spoke, her voice clear and steady. She didn't dwell on the darkness they'd survived. Instead, she spoke of the light that followed, of the way the community had come together, of how Marigold's spirit had inspired them all. As the celebration wound down, Audrey led Marigold to the edge of the pasture and whispered her thanks. The horse nuzzled her, soft and warm, as if to say, "We did this together." That night, as the lanterns flickered and laughter drifted over the fields, Audrey lay in bed, feeling peace settle over her at last. She knew that there would always be struggles, that new storms might come. But she also knew, deep down, unshakably, that every ending was just a new beginning. For Audrey Lane, for Marigold, and for Stillwater itself, the future was bright. The power of truth, compassion, and courage would echo for generations, a legacy built not on fear, but on hope. And so, as the moon rose over the Lane Ranch, the world felt new again, full of possibility, healing, and the quiet promise that whatever came next, they would face it together.